This is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Donny, Alex, Jeremy, and Jeff Burton.
Well, boys, here we are, another edition of the Last Minute Blues Podcast, which is brought to you by Blue Note Roofing, roofing, siding, and gutters, your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for a free inspection. From The Athletic, Jeremy Rutherford from 101 ESPN, also handling your pre- and post-game and in-game.
In between, intermission, whatever you want, Don.
Every part of the game.
Yeah, pretty much all of it.
There was a real simple way to say that, and boy, I just didn't find it.
No, you nailed it.
Our dude, Alex Ferrario. So we got a couple of things here to start the podcast off with. I want to start out with this. People, I love you. I am so thankful that you listen to this podcast. You have absolutely no idea. This is one of the most fun things in which that I get to do in my career. If I forget to say Jeff Burton's name at the end of the podcast or at the beginning of the podcast, I am not trying to forget our fallen brother. I had a guy come up to me at my remote on Friday and said he had a bone to pick with me because in the last two episodes, I had not mentioned Jeff's name in the outro. Here's what I know. I can't talk to Jeff right now, but I know there's a couple things. One, Jeff is up in heaven watching everyone have sex. That's two, I know that he would not give a flying F if I mentioned his name in the outro or not. He would just be so stoked that we were still doing it and that people were still listening. So I don't even want to bang on the guy that said that to me. I know he means well, but it makes me feel bad. For real. It makes me feel bad that people think that I'm forgetting or shortchanging our dude. And I would never, ever, ever do that.
Oh, we know you wouldn't.
Can I get a little
grace?
Can I get a little wiggle room there?
Oh, for sure.
Please and thank you.
Yeah, for sure. But it would be funny, though, if Jeff was listening to the podcast, which he is, and he, at the end, you don't say his name. He goes, "What the hell?"
Right. Oh, that's fine.
Now we're upset, Jeff.
Right. And see, and that's the thing, is that he initially wouldn't care, but then once this guy has busted my balls about it, oh boy, that would just be prime opportunity for Jeff to get in there and make me feel real guilty with this ass-eating grin on his face the entire time.
I'd like to go back to the first point, though, of him up top, because thanks for making me more insecure in those areas of my life. Really appreciate that, Donny.
He is, and he's loving every second of it. That's just the truth of it.
Knew somebody was watching.
Real quick here before we start talking about our boys in blue, you had a chance to see Blink-182 on Friday night out at the amphitheater.
Yes.
And I just wanted to get a quick Alex Ferrario Blink-182 show review.
Wait, before you give the review, I want you to grade the review here. You're a professional at this?
Yes.
He's going to nail it, but I want to hear the grade.
I'm not going to nail it because I'm going to fanboy this for a minute. That was the best concert that I have ever been to.
Oh, really?
And I saw them back in 2009. This was significantly better. Okay. Now, much props to Donny Fandango because he hooked me and my buddy up so that we had good seats. So, we were I could smell Mark Hoppus's sweat on stage, which was amazing. But from the songs that they chose to the actual performance they put on, the thing that I love about Blink-182, one is because they're just real dudes.
Yeah.
They're just so real dudes. The big thing that they do is they flip everyone off the entire time. And it's so much fun. But the chemistry that they have amongst each other, at one point, Tom was ribbing on Mark, and then Mark started making fun of Tom's mom, and Tom started making fun of Mark's mom, and it was just back and forth for 5 minutes, and then, oh, cool, next song. Right. And then they just started going into it. And then just the creme de la creme of the concert, at the end, just a big flaming middle finger behind them as they're singing. Yeah. So, best concert I have been to. I can't wait to see them again. I freaking love that band, and I freaking love you, Donny, for getting me there.
Before you do the grade here, I could smell a dude's sweat, and they were flipping me off the entire concert, but it was unbelievable. It was the best show I've ever seen.
The best show.
The first time that I saw Blink at the amphitheater, they had the F word on stage in their backdrop, and it would shoot fire throughout the course of the show, which I thought was really amazing. Did you get to see, did Travis Barker do any of his amazing, drum solo kind of things?
Yeah, went off for probably a good 10 minutes in the middle of Rockstar, right, where he just started banging on the drums. Oh my God. Travis Barker's incredible. Rock Show, yes, Rock Show. And then also...
Way to know the song.
I know. I was fanboying for a little bit there.
That was kind of a dick thing to do, truthfully.
No, it's good. But then the other one was Tom. Watching Tom and Mark just jump around the stage while they're playing guitar guitar. Because, sometimes you just see guys just stand in one spot and play guitar. Oh, no, these guys milk the entire stage. So.
And what's really wonderful about that band at this point, and I got to give that review, a solid 4 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5. It's fantastic. But one of the things that's so wonderful about that band is that they are legitimately, genuinely friends. And when they broke up, they were genuinely not speaking, not talking. Yeah. Mark got cancer, and then it kind of sort of brought everything back together. But of all of the gigantic bands that I have ever talked to in my entire life, those dudes are some of the nicest guys that I've ever met. Travis has always been very quiet, but Tom and Mark are super outgoing. They're always incredibly friendly, Tom especially. And so they are just, for me, a really easy band to root for. And then when you go and see them, you know what you're in for. You're just going to have a good time. Yeah. You're going to laugh. You're going to drink beers. They're going to make sex jokes. Left, right,
almost
and center.
The whole time.
But it's just fun. You're not going to get hit with anything political at that show, at all.
After the first song that they sang, there was a inflatable, had to have been 8 foot long, male anatomically body part. And it just was starting to just move around. And then in the middle of the concert, after the song, Tom said, "Hey, Mark, look, your mom sent a toy with the fans to St. Louis." And it's all right, I know we're in for a good show tonight. And at the beginning of it, too, their entrance, I'm going on Blink-182 tangent now. At the beginning of it, they had Bruce Buffer introduce them, a video of him in front of a green screen. And then they showed each one of them on camera behind the curtain, backstage. And it was like a boxing setup. So they had where they're from, their weight and things. And on Tom's, it said, "Where he's from, your mom."
Oh, my God.
Dude, one of the first times that Mark and Tom ever hung out, they were at, I believe it was Tom's house, and Mark climbed up a tree to kind of impress him and his mom, and then jumped down and broke his shin. Landed funny, and Tom's mom was like, "Who is this kid?"
Who's this psychopath?
But it's just really wonderful because as we've gotten older, and when you see a star that or a musician that you like a lot, like Mark Hoppus, who was battling cancer there for a while, and you see him come out the other side, and the band doing great and making great songs. Oh my God. Last album of theirs, One More Time, was outstanding. And so it's just, man, with a lot of negatives going on, it's good to see some of those kinds of positives.
The only thing that was missing, JR, was JR and Donny at the Blink-182 concert.
Well, next time, if tickets aren't such a friggin' bitch, we will make it absolutely
amen
happen.
to that.
So let's talk about our St. Louis Blues here as we get closer to the start of the season. Guys, one thing that I have not even, honestly, when I see the scores of the preseason games, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even think about it. I always wonder, how did they play? But I always feel like there is a reason a lot of times for those scores, whether it's line matchups, it's players getting time in places that they normally wouldn't. Should we be at all concerned about what we have seen from the Blues in the preseason? Or am I okay to think they're working it out and it's preseason?
I always ask the question, what was their preseason record when they won the Stanley Cup? And actually, I don't know the answer, so I'm not going to be able to support my argument.
I actually want to go back and look at that now and find out.
Yeah, Donnie, you're right. It doesn't mean anything. And listen, and I don't even know in a week if you'll remember what the preseason record was, but you certainly won't in a couple months. This is about seeing where players are. And you look at Dylan Howey last night, he's in midseason form. Forget about the 2 goals. How about that drop back between the legs pass to Kyrou? That line with Pius Suter, even if it's him or it's Braden Shen, I just think you're in for a lot of fun with that line this year. We've seen some other things throughout camp. Logan Mayu shows up and he looks the part. There's so many things I think in camp to be excited about that the record is something that you don't pay attention to. So having said all that, things are going to amp up now here, Alex, with the last 2 preseason games. You got to kind of start to pull it together because it's so important that this team gets off to a great start.
They were 4-3 in the preseason that they won the Stanley Cup. So 4-3 and 2 overtime.
Oh my God, we're lost.
I know, everybody panic. We're about to fall.
They were also last place in January.
Yeah, so I'm not worried about that. I said this on postgame the other night. I understand the panic because there's so much excitement for the season. And when you're 0-4 and you're thinking what is going on? But I went through every one of those lines for people on the radio and you had Holloway playing with Stenberg and Dvorsky in the first preseason game. That was the NHL line. The second game, it was Dvorsky, it was Lucic, it was Carbonneau, and it was Bukestad. Like, these lines have all been one, maybe NHL line, and a lot of guys that aren't going to be here at camp. Now, I guess the question you could be asking is, did the Blues hold those players around too long? Like, do you want to build chemistry up faster? But I mean, if you really think about it, you don't need to build chemistry with Thomas, Buchnevich, and Snuggerud. They played together last year. Pius Suter, Holloway, and Kyrou in one game already looked like, as JR mentioned, mid-season form. So really the chemistry you're talking about is your fourth line, because if Schenn and Neighbors are playing together, they're used to each other. So I'm not worried about that, because when you look at the rosters, none of these rosters are expected to really go out there and have success. One game was lost in a shootout. One game was lost because a goaltender gave up 4 goals in the third period. So I think if my expectation would be that game against Ottawa and Chicago will be an NHL-looking lineup. If there are struggles there, then I guess you can start to say, like, what's going on? Because I can understand where the panic, if you want to call it that, is coming from, because Blues fans know how critical it is to start the season right. You can't start slow, because then you're playing catch-up, and catch-up's not easy in the NHL. But man, 4 preseason games where one night looked like it was close to resembling an NHL lineup, no, I'm not going to worry about 0-4.
All right, so it seems as though, and this is something that I heard you on TMA this morning, JR, and you were talking about how when it comes to those last couple of spots, that maybe Texier and Joseph aren't exactly taking the ball and running with it. Is this an opportunity? I mean, this is really an opportunity then for Milan Lucic to maybe make this team, even if he's looked rusty and maybe hasn't looked, the best necessarily.
Yeah, and, Joseph has had his moments early in camp. Texier, Alex and I sit next to each other in press box. You've seen a few plays, but I feel like you know what they are, right? And to me, when you get to the middle part of the preseason and we're talking about specific roster battles and we're talking about 12th, 13th, 14th forward, and you put a line out there last night of Lucic, Texier, and Joseph, and you can't notice Texier and Joseph, like, that's an issue, I think. And how much do they want this? You're talking no shots on goal combined, and I think a couple turnovers for Texier. And so while I'm still not sold on Lucic, and we'll get into him, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I feel like there aren't other players in that roster battle who are trying to grab the spot, which might make the Blues decision even a little bit easier than it might be.
That's how I felt. Like last night after watching it, it's like, cool, I think the roster's already made up. And it's not because Joseph and Texier have been significantly better than everybody. It's just nobody has taken it. Like, I've seen one game, and I thought Dvorsky was good again last night, but I just don't know if he's ready for a full-time NHL role. I think there's still some more seasoning. Jim Montgomery was glowing about Otto Stenberg before the game, but I as good as he was, I just didn't feel like he stood out and was noticeable. And that was the one thing Montgomery said. Like, if you're going to make this team for opening night, you not only have to stand out, but you need to be significantly better than the rest. And I don't know if anybody has done that. So to me, I think they're in a position where, yes, you want to compete, and yes, this window is starting to open, but not to the extent of rushing a Dvorsky or a Stenberg and telling them, like, hey, we need you to be this guy, because that's not what's going to be good for your long-term future. So unfortunately, I think nobody has really taken that spot and ran with it. So I would say the 2 spots that you're deciding on have come down to Joseph, Texier, and Lucic. And my guess is, unless somebody takes it and runs with it in these next couple of games, they slow play it and you just bring Joseph and Texier, and maybe Lucic gets a contract later on. Maybe he's with the team, but nobody has taken that to where it's like, oh yeah, that's your third line. In fact, I think Nick Bukestad has done enough for me to say that's my third line wing, mostly because I don't know if I like Bukestad at the center position.
So, guys, all right, well then, so you're seeing this shake out with Texier and Joseph getting those last 2 roster spots, JR, would you agree? Or
well,
no?
Yeah, but with a caveat here. So you're looking at 2 spots. And it depends if they think Lucic is ready to sign a contract going into opening night. If they think that he is, and they feel like, it's going to take him some time, but eventually he's going to be a guy who can help this team, and they sign him, then that's going to eat up one of those spots. But it can be a situation, Alex did a good job of alluding to this a couple of weeks ago, that it could be a deal where they bring Texier and Joseph onto the opening night roster, and then they sign Lucic to a PTO or a series of PTOs that eventually gets him signed at some point, and then maybe then they put Texier or Joseph through waivers to try to send him out. But there's only 2 spots left. So 2 spots for those 3 guys. And I do think that they're going to do the asset management and send Dvorsky and Stenberg down to the American Hockey League because they can. They don't need waivers.
And the hard part with all of this too is, you have to do that roster crunch and say, like, do we want to risk losing a Joseph or a Texier? Because if for some reason one of those guys were claimed off of waivers, well, now that's an NHL guy that you were relying on. And let's say Lucic, 20 games into the season, looks like he's struggling a little bit. And you're like, how is this going to work? Do we still have him for 82? And if he doesn't, if you feel that way and you've lost one of those guys to waivers, well, now you're bringing up a Dvorsky, or now you're bringing up a Stenberg that maybe he's not ready for it. So really it's going to come down to just the way that they're evaluating those younger guys and if they feel like how close they are to the NHL level. But I just, after that game last night, to where I've seen, I think it's been 3 games of Joseph, 2 games of Texier, 3 games of Dvorsky, I just watched it and it's like, man, nobody has stood out enough to where it's like, oh yeah, he needs to make this roster, which just might resort to Texier and Joseph making it.
I just don't love the idea of the younger guys being here and not having a role and having to, play once every 2 weeks. To me, that is not good at all for the development for either of those young bucks in Dvorsky or Stenberg. So you send them down to the AHL, let them have their season, let them percolate and get more seasoning down there. And then hopefully later on in the year, they could be, they could maybe be something that you can bring up if there's an injury.
Yeah, because I think Jim Montgomery laid this out perfectly last week, where he's like, look, this was the game that they had Carbonneau, Dvorsky, and Pekarchik, and I think they were playing like on the 4th line. And he's like, these guys, 4th line minutes, I should say. They were like a 3rd line group. But he said, like, these guys aren't going to crack the top 6 if they're on this team. Mm-hmm. So they need to play more into a realistic role. So the real question is, do you want these guys in the first couple of weeks of the season to be playing 12, 13 minutes a night? Does that benefit their development? Or do you want them to go down to the AHL and just continue to be top line guys, power play, penalty kill, 20 plus minutes a night, continuing that development growth while you have a Bukestad who could play the 3rd line, or a Joseph or a Texier, because those guys can fill that void for you and be competitive rather than force a guy into a position that maybe he's not going to have success with right away.
Do you see maybe with Texier and Joseph, do you think maybe, the Blues are going to be really checking out the waiver wires? I mean, do you think that there's a chance that maybe those 2 don't end up making it, that maybe the Blues go outside of the organization to look for an extra forward, things like that? Do you? Yeah,
I think that's definitely a possibility. We've been saying this for months that, if Texier and Joseph aren't necessarily on your 3rd line, are they 4th line players? No. Are they guys who can sit in the press box and play once every couple weeks? I suppose Alex touched on it. If you do lose them, and it's not the end of the world, but if you do, it's a significant drop off to the prospects in terms of NHL experience. And now you are forcing them to come up, and certainly the Blues don't want to do that. So they're going to be careful with the waiver situation. But like you said, there's going to be a lot of guys that go on waivers, and maybe they find a better fit for this roster than those 2 guys.
We'll be back with more of the Last Minute Blues podcast in just a second. I don't know why, guys, I get this feeling, and I could very well be wrong. I mean, I also said last week on this podcast that Kaprizov was out of Minnesota, that he would not resign. Gone. But I just get this feeling that the Blues want Milan Lucic to make this team. Am I the only one that feels that way?
No, I mean, I felt that way from day one when Doug Armstrong talked, because when I originally saw him sign the PTO, I think we talked about it on the podcast, it felt like just one of those, well, he's doing him a favor, he's giving him a shot and letting other teams see how Milan Lucic plays. But then I heard Doug Armstrong talk about how, watching him in the World Championships for the last few years really feels like he's a leader. Jim Montgomery talking about how he brings elements to his game that other guys on this team can't. And then hearing Jake Neighbors talk the other day about him, saying like, look, this guy is more than just an enforcer. He's smart. He knows what he's doing. He's a great leader. It's like, man, everybody is saying the same thing. That sounds like Milan Lucic needs to make this team. Now, the real question is, can Milan Lucic keep up in the NHL today? I don't know about you, JR, but I didn't feel like he was slower than everybody else in the preseason game that we saw against Dallas. He definitely looked like his mind was a step behind everybody. But really, when you think about it, what role is he going to be playing? He's going to be playing a fourth-line role with a Walker and Toropchenko, which the goal is keep puck possession. Offensive zone, heavy puck possession. I mean, guys, Radek Faksa was not the fastest skater last season, but they found a way to be a really good line together. But that's also assuming that Milan Lucic is not going to play every single game. He's probably going to be up in the press box for a couple of weeks, back down. Here was the one thing I thought of why it makes sense. Do you guys remember that game against Utah last season, to where Tyler Tucker faked like he was going to fight Liam O'Brien off of a faceoff, and then he backed away and he took the shot and he scored the goal?
Yeah.
Because at that moment, I think they were up 1-0, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is a game that the Blues are just going to run with. And then O'Brien fought Tucker later on, and that sparked Utah, and Utah went on like a 6-2 victory. That sticks in my mind because those guys are a rallying point for their players. Mm-hmm. And everything that everybody says about Milan Lucic is like, oh yeah, this guy is going to be a hell of a leader. That stops those Liam O'Briens from doing that in those games, but maybe it also sparks the Blues. And then the side question with that, which I'll stop talking, is a 37-year-old Milan Lucic who's been away from the game for 2 years willing to fight every time he steps onto the ice? Because that's the role he's going to have to take on. So I think he's going to make it. I just don't know if it's going to be on opening night versus 3 weeks into the season.
Sure.
Yeah, first of all, you weren't the only one on Kaprizov. We were just talking last week, and I said, well, guys, maybe he just doesn't want the 8-year. Maybe he wants the 5-year. No, he just wanted $8 more million.
No, he just wanted to get to $19 million.
He just wanted to get more money. With Lucic, here's the thing that I've started to kind of comprehend is we look at him out on the ice in practice. We look at him in the preseason game last night, and he doesn't look like he can be on your fourth line in an NHL game next Thursday. However, Blues are big picture with this. Can he help this team? And they're probably telling themselves, yeah, he can if we can, see him get up to speed. So this is probably a longer term thing than maybe I was giving it credit for early on. Alex, again, touched on it, is everybody that you interview, whether it be, Jake Neighbors or whomever, I wrote it this morning, it almost sounds like a foregone conclusion in their mind that he's on the team. Like Jake Neighbors said, he's going to be a great ad, So these players already feel like he's on the team. So, I always say that they know more than we know when it comes to some of this stuff. Maybe they don't, but we'll see. But here's the thing. Okay, so let's say that Dvorsky, Stenberg go down. Let's say that Texier and Joseph are, not in the picture. Maybe they're 13th, 14th forward. What is your lineup going to look like? Is Nick Bukestad going to be your third line right winger? If he is, then it's going to be Toropchenko on the left, let's say Sundqvist in the middle on the fourth line, and Nathan Walker on the right. So if Milan Lucic is on this team, how many games is he going to play? Who's he going to step in for? I'm not saying that you can't take Sundqvist or Walker out of the lineup. I'm just saying, it's a fourth line that you probably like, right? And are we putting in a guy who's 37 who still looks a step slower, is behind the play, he's not there yet, and pulling a Nathan Walker out who brings it every single night? Right. So they might hang on to him, just getting back to that big picture response, and eventually get him in the lineup, and maybe Sundqvist goes up to the third line right wing, and Bukestad comes down to the fourth line center, and they get Lucic in there somehow. I'm just saying, if they keep Milan Lucic, there has to be a purpose to it. Like they've got to have a plan moving forward for this season. When's he going to play? Who's he going to play against? And who's he going to play with? And who are you comfortable taking out?
And that purpose feels like it's going to be in those nasty games where you don't want the other guys going around and taking shots at your players, whether it's Utah with O'Brien or Marcus Foligno with the Minnesota Wild. Like that feels more like the role. And to me, I to JR's point, like Walker's in it. That's a non-negotiable. He's in the lineup every single night. I think the one you're talking about is Sundqvist. But when you take Sundqvist out, well, now you're putting Walker at the center position, or you're moving Toropchenko or Walker up to the wing with Bukestad moving down. And so that's where I feel like it could really mess things up, because let's not forget, that fourth line was a massive reason that the Blues made the playoffs last year. Yeah. So if Lucic is playing, you've got to adapt to this identity.
And Donny, Alex asked a question earlier, is Milan Lucic ready, willing, and able to play that role? Because that's what they're going to need him to do. That's what Jim Montgomery's been talking about for a couple weeks. And so last night, game's over. I go down in the locker room, ask for Lucic, get him for a couple minutes, and my very last question. So I got a question. And he goes, yeah. I go, you're 37. Like, you want to be dropping the gloves and, 6-7 hits per night. You still want to do this? And he said, yeah, that's what they need. That's what I want to do. And then he kind of said that I've never been one of those guys who throws up all day long thinking about it. I just go out and do it at the end of the night. So to answer your question, because Alex, I wondered the same thing. A lot of times guys, they get to their 30, 32, they don't want to do it. This guy's 37, and he said, hey, if that's what they give me.
5 hits in that preseason game against Dallas. So he's not afraid to be physical. And again, like for the people that say, well, Lucic is too slow, he can't play. Faksa was slow last year, but he made it work because he used his size and his body, and he won faceoffs. Now, Lucic isn't taking faceoffs for you, but can Lucic do what Pat Maroon did early on in the Blues in that Stanley Cup season? Of every time you're out there, you're just a presence in the offensive zone. When the puck's along the wall, can you keep it alive? Like, that's the role you're playing. You've got to keep the puck in a good position on the ice so that the next line that steps out there can build off of that momentum.
All right, so we talked a lot on the last podcast about the forwards, and we have obviously here as well with the 12-13s, but I want to talk about the defense. Obviously, a really big week for the Blues and Cam Fowler. He signs I think it was 3x6 extension.
6.1, 18.3.
And which will kick in starting next year.
Don't cut him out that 100,000.
Jared was like Rain Man there. 6.1, 18.3, Judge Wapner, 3 years.
One of the things that I want to ask you guys, and I'm just genuinely asking because I did this on purpose. When I saw all of the places post about this signing, I wanted to see what the other hockey nerds would say. And one of the things that came up fairly often was calling this an overpay. Do you guys look at it as that? From what I saw of Cam Fowler in a limited time last year, and granted, limited time, he definitely seems to be worth $6.1 million.
18.3.
But can you guys talk about that deal? What you see, just all things as you see it.
Yeah, I think that when you have a conversation about a guy who signs a contract, a couple things. First of all, like, it's a great fit, right? Cam Fowler came in here and he looks good.
And it seemed like it happened. Like, it didn't seem like it took him a long time to get used to being in the lineup. It seemed like it was a couple games and he was gone.
Well, his third game, he scored 2 goals in the Winter Classic.
That's right. That's right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Not at all. So you got a couple young prospects who are, Theo Linstein, you got Lucas Fisher, you got some guys, but they're 18, 19 years old. They're going to take a couple years. So Cam Fowler is going to help bridge that gap. My question is always in these situations, if it's not Cam, then who it is? Who is it? Are you going to go out and find another Cam Fowler who can come in here but might not be as good of a fit? The second part that I always ask myself in these situations, remember, the player has to agree to the contract too. So the team and the fans can sit there and say, okay, 2 more years for Cam Fowler. That's the longest I'm going with Cam Fowler. Guess what? Him and his agent are saying,
they got a different philosophy.
We'll go 3. Yeah. I'm 33. I want to take it. And so the other thing is, it's like the old ACT GPA thing. You're trying to get in college and you got this GPA, you need to get this ACT, and it swivels. And that's the way it is with term on a contract and the money. And so could Cam Fowler, if he went to UFA, could he get $7 million or maybe? But he's going to want the 3 years, and then he'll go down to the 6.1, Donny, and then now you got a contract. So the thing is, he's got 1 year left on his current deal still. So now that makes it 4 years total. That takes him to 37. I can understand where people skeptical, especially in St. Louis, just because Nick Leddy, Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, all these long-term contracts. But I will say this: I think Cam Fowler, whether you get 2 more good years out of him or maybe 3, like he showed last year that he's a good player still, and maybe better than the names that we just mentioned. He's running a power play, like he's doing some other things. I think he can still be a good third pair defenseman in a couple years. And when the cap's 113, 114 million, 6.1 isn't a bad thing.
Let me ask you guys this, because I've seen the same thing you did, to where it's been like, oh, this is an overpay. What are you doing? Let him play the year out and then pay him. Would you pay Cam Fowler $4.6 million for the next 3 years? Is that an overpay, or is that, you feel like, a steal?
Well, I think it would be a steal.
That's what he's going to be making in 2 years towards the cap. Oh. So his cap hit with the cap rising, it's the equivalent of $4.6 million when he's making that 6.1 in 2 years from now.
Look at the math there, Donny.
I know. Well, Rain Man over here did that a couple of days ago when I saw. But once you see people complain about something, it's like, okay, well, how can I spin this? And that was the way that I looked at it. We're complaining about there are some complaining about a $6.1 million cap hit for Cam Fowler when he's 36 years old. But what if that 36-year-old is still playing 18 minutes a night and posting 50 points for you? Because what he was on pace for in an entire 82-game schedule after he was acquired by the Blues was 18 goals and 50-something points. And I don't think that's sustainable throughout an entire season, but think of the offense that the Blues have now and what they have coming. And if Cam Fowler's running a power play for you, even if he's not playing 20 minutes a night, because you'll have Broberg who continues to get better, if he's playing 18 minutes a night and still producing points and running a power play for you, that to me is worth it. And my first reaction when I saw it was, okay, cool. So the Blues are expecting to keep competing. This is no longer a retool like they were talking about.
Yeah.
You don't re-sign Cam Fowler for 3 more years and when he's going to be 37 at the end of this contract and say, we hope we're a playoff team. No, Cam Fowler is there to hope you get to the playoffs this year, next year, and the year after. And then once you get to that second year of his 3-year extension, that's when you hope to see the Lindsteins and the Lucas Fishers and the Colin Ralphs. But at that point, Broberg might be your number 1 defenseman. Fowler might be playing second line for you, and you slow play these younger guys in. It's what they did when they had Bouwmeester here. They re-signed Bouwmeester, and they said, hey, we'll slow play it with the Vince Dunns. We'll slow play it with some of these other guys. This is the recipe for making sure you're not forcing younger guys into a position that they can't succeed in.
Speaking of younger guys, what have we seen from Logan Mailloux so far?
Yeah, look really good. I think he's going to start opening night, that third pair with Tyler Tucker. And just to piggyback on that, Matthew Kessel, I think, was a guy who was probably going to be the 7th guy, and he may still be. He had a tough night last night. Kind of had a little bit of a tough camp. And Hunter Skinner, a guy who the Blues got in the Tarasenko trade with the Rangers. It's funny how those things work out. Tarasenko's no longer with the Rangers. Mikola's no longer with the Rangers. I guess the Blues got a first-round pick in that deal, but they also got Hunter Skinner, who's just kind of that depth guy. I think
that first-round pick turned into Stenberg, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, probably, yeah.
It was either Stenberg or Lindstein, because it was
those two guys that
Nashville
year.
Draft.
Yeah, and but all I'm saying is, whether it's for opening night or whether it's a month in the season, keep an eye on the Kessel situation, and also Hunter Skinner being a guy who the Blues really like. A couple players last night who did not play said that they really like the jam that Hunter Skinner brings.
Yeah, he brings some physical play like Tucker does.
And the thing too about Kessel is that if you try to put that dude through waivers, he'll get snatched up, right? He's not going to be somebody that's going to.
Yeah, you're not wrong. The only thing is you have to put them on your NHL roster. So a team can't take them and put them in their minors.
Yeah.
And this time of year, teams are like, oh, how are we going to fit everybody on the 23-man? So it is kind of tough for teams to do that. So this is a good time that if you're trying to get a guy through. And I think last year the Blues kind of worried that Kessel would get snatched up, and they hung on to him.
And you didn't have the depth last year that you could rely on as much as now.
Yeah. He's just somebody that I've really kind of waiting to see kind of what the next step is for him. You know what I mean? Like, you like what you've seen so far, but he would just be another guy that I would hate to lose. But this is where it gets weird with me and players because I get emotionally attached for no good goddamn reason.
If you think about it, though, I mean, like, Tucker leapfrogged him last year because Kessel was one I think going into last season was like, oh, he's going to be in your top 6. By the end of the season, Tucker was clear cut in there. And then Broberg continued to improve. And then you get Logan Mayhew, like, that's 6 guys that have leapfrogged over him. And the problem with this is that opportunity to grab that spot and say, this is mine, I'm not letting it go.
And he has not done that.
No. I mean, Hunter Skinner, there were a lot of people talking about Hunter Skinner last night in just one game that he played in. So that's the tough part of this one. And I mean, if you're the Blues, yes, you don't want to lose depth. So you do have to do that roster manipulation somewhat, but you also need to make sure you got the right guys and the best players in the position. And as a 7th defenseman, you want a guy who brings a little bite to his game, maybe more so than what Kessel has.
And Donnie, we talked about the forwards. We talked about the defensemen. Little scoop here, goaltending.
Scoop.
It's going to be Binnington and Hofer.
Oh my God!
This year,
What are you? You can't say that now.
He didn't even say that for an article. He's just dropping those bombs right here.
We weren't going to read that one, so
I just wanted to break it here.
You ain't getting any new subscribers on that article. The podcast is the place to drop that kind of nugget.
Hey, listen, I did my homework on this. Before I come and say something like that on the air, I'm going to do my homework. I don't go smell dudes sweat and get flipped off. And I sit home and work.
That's true.
Stuff.
That's true. I did do all of those things on Friday.
You did your due diligence.
I didn't actively smell his sweat. It was just there, and you could smell it.
Guys, we got to wrap this up because we have things to do. But I interviewed Alkaline Trio, the opening band for Blink on Friday, and they are one of my very favorite bands of all time. I mean, like, in my top 10. I love them so much. Dudes, I have not hammered in a bad way an interview like that in a long time. The friggin' fanboy in me completely took over. Zane here sent me the interview a couple days ago to watch. I cannot bring myself to watch it.
Is that why we didn't see Skiba on stage that night with Blink singing? Did you ruin it for us?
No.
Okay.
But we're on their bus, and I'm interviewing them, and I'm looking at their lead singer Matt Skiba, and I just can't believe that I'm looking at this friggin' guy and that I'm talking to him, and my brain was just going 800 miles a minute. And normally I'm good at those sorts of things in those situations. I had been kicking myself in the nuts ever since Friday.
It's funny, Matt Skiba was probably like, that dude was awesome. He kept staring at me.
I don't know if it was awesome. What he was thinking.
What now?
Alkaline Trio.
Alkaline Trio.
Do they just put a bunch of names in a hat and pull it out? And
JR, are you hip or not?
I am not.
First of all, that's not very nice. They are no, but they're just like a pop punk band from Chicago, Illinois, and they had this album called From Here to Infirmary that came out in 2001, and I mean, I was working at a record store at that time, and I listened to it a zillion times and just fell in love with them and really, was stoked for the opportunity. And the whole day I'm like, dude, I'm calm, cool, collected. And then as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh, crap. There they are.
There's David Perron.
Downhill fast.
It's like, there's David Perron on my Zoom.
All right. So we're a week away, boys. We're a little more than a week away from this thing getting going. Another episode of the Last Minute Blues podcast coming your way next week. And you can always email us if you have questions, lmbp@1057thepoint.com. Don't be a douche or I'll just delete it.
That's the title, actually. When you write the email, the subject should be not being a douche.
Just don't. It's way easier not to be. Last Minute Blues podcast is presented by Blue Note Roofing, siding, and gutters, your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for a free inspection. For our homeboy, Jeff Burton.
There it is.
Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN.
Boo.
Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. I'm Donny Fandango. Thanks as always for listening and watching. And let's go Blues.
The Last Minute Blues podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.